trains, city buses, and air travel. Ports were shut down. Wood and metal processing plants were idle. Office workers, retail clerks, service and public health workers, who are among the most affected by this legislation, joined the walkout. Tens of thousands rallied in the rain at the Central Railway Station in Helsinki, the capital city. The date for the austerity program to take effect is September 30th. It should be noted that general strikes have been held in most of Europe's countries in recent months. The capitalist crisis is worldwide, and everywhere the solution of the corporate and financial bosses is the same: to save their profit margins by impoverishing the workers. It's a true dead-end solution. The resistance to this never-ending downward spiral is growing on every continent, as we report here on the Labor Forum. In national news, there are 2 contract settlements to report. The 5,000 Seattle teachers and staff who struck for 6 days in a fight for not only better pay and working conditions for their members, but in large part to demand changes to improve the education of their students, voted on Sunday yesterday and approved a 3-year contract. The contract provides a 9.5% pay raise plus a state cost of living raise of 4.8%. A key demand for guaranteed 30-minute recess for elementary students was one, as well as changes in testing, an issue plaguing teachers and students across the country. One of the most important results of the strike was the resounding support from parents and the community at large, who saw the teachers' strike and the struggle they were fighting for all of Seattle's public school children as their own battle. At least 3 other Washington state cities are also experiencing similar strikes by public school teachers after years of devastating budget cuts and increased testing requirements. And in Detroit, the UAW and Fiat Chrysler have announced an agreement on a 4-year contract. On last Monday's program, Martha Gravatt, a Chrysler skilled trades worker and labor activist, addressed some of the main issues facing auto workers, unionized and unorganized, in the U.S. Chief among them was the existence of a 2-tier wage system that pays workers hired before 2007, or called Tier 1 workers, considerably more benefits, including pension and health care. They also have much higher salaries. 2-tier workers hired after 2007 started at almost half the hourly wage and did not have similar benefits. According to major media reports, Tier 2 workers will get an immediate raise to $17 an hour upon acceptance. Over the contract, the new higher starting pay, now a measly $15.78, will reach a maximum of $19 an hour, and the highest pay grade for Tier 2 workers will reach $25.35. The Tier 1 workers, whose hourly rate is currently $28.05 and has been frozen for 9 years, will earn a maximum of $29.76 by the end of the contract. The disparity in benefits, including health care and a defined pension, remain. In the last decades, growing use of robots in assembly plants and the outsourcing of parts production to low-wage non-union plants, especially in the South, has reduced the membership of the UAW to a fraction of its size in the 1970s. Auto companies based in other countries have moved as well to the South to take advantage of hostile anti-union laws such as the misnamed right-to-work statutes that impede worker organizing. During the economic collapse in mid-2000, the UAW bowed to the demands of the auto bosses and allowed the introduction of a 2-tier wage system that is a blow to solidarity. Of the 3 big auto companies, Chrysler has the highest percentage of Tier 2 workers, some 43% of its workforce, compared to 29% at Ford and 19% at GM. While much attention has been paid to the wage increases in all the reports I read, only one mentioned that Chrysler will close all of its car plants in the U.S. and move them to Mexico. and invest $5.3 billion in upgrading and expanding SUV and truck plants in the U.S., but only if sales and profits stay high. Chrysler workers will be voting on the contract throughout this week. If it is accepted, then the UAW will announce whether Ford or GM is next to begin negotiations. The Chrysler deal will provide a model. And lastly, today is the anniversary of the 2011 execution of Troy Davis, convicted of killing a Savannah policeman in 1989 in a trial widely characterized as using forced and false witness testimony, having no physical evidence, no murder weapon, or forensics connecting Davis to the crime. Davis maintained his innocence throughout all the legal appeals and up to his last breath. His case generated more than 1 million signatures on petitions calling for clemency from the Georgia governor. Despite the recantation of the witnesses and many other examples of a failure to provide a fair trial, the state of Georgia killed Troy Anthony Davis on September 21st. This morning it was announced that the delayed execution of Kelly Gissendanner has been set to take place next week, Tuesday, September 29th at 7 p.m. Andrew Brennan and Warren Hill were executed in January of this year, and there may be as many as 5 more executions before the end of 2015. The death penalty is the ultimate exercise of state violence, and throughout its use has been almost exclusively imposed on the poor, workers, people of color, and the mentally ill. And that concludes our labor headlines for today, and we'll move right away to This Week in Labor History with Paul.
Thanks, Diane. On September 22nd, 1946, the Food, Tobacco, Agricultural, and Allied Workers of America reached a contract agreement with the Piedmont Tobacco Company, marking an early victory in the Congress of Industrial Organizations Operation Dixie campaign. In the aftermath of World War II, the largest strike wave in American history shook the nation in late 1945 and much of 1946. The CIO knew that if it couldn't expand and organize the South, then the whole labor movement would be weakened. Operation Dixie was not just a union drive, it was called a civil rights crusade, and the most important drive of its kind ever undertaken by any labor organization in this country. Organizing 800 new locals with 400,000 members, the CIO doubled its Southern membership. By the end of 1946, the CIO claimed to have lost only 54 out of 288 National Labor Relations Board elections in the South. Black workers and radicals played a key role in many of these victories. Initially, the CIO leadership recognized that it had to tackle the issue of race head-on if it was going to succeed. The system of white supremacy was also inseparable from established Southern class and gender hierarchies. According to historian Michael Honey, the CIO's early strategy of appealing to immediate economic interests and avoiding discussions of race failed to raise white consciousness or to address the issue of how blacks would be treated inside the CIO once unionization succeeded. Differences remained between whites in skilled positions and black workers doing unskilled work. Whites were reluctant to let go of their privileged positions in the workplace and in the running of the union. As the CIO was planning Operation Dixie, tobacco workers in Winston-Salem, North Carolina went on strike. The tobacco leaf houses were highly segregated workplaces. One of the largest factories was the R.J. Reynolds factory in Winston-Salem. The CIO knew it could not organize the South without breaking down segregation at work. Low-wage black labor made up the majority of the workforce for the job of stripping tobacco leaves from the stems, a difficult process to mechanize. Workers had joined Local 22 of the Food, Tobacco, Agricultural, and Allied Workers of America in 1943, winning collective bargaining rights and giving African American workers access to political power for the first time since the crushing of Reconstruction by white supremacist forces at the end of the 19th century. The FTA was a radical union with a deep commitment to fighting against both capitalism and white supremacy. Local 22's predominantly black membership transformed the union into a vehicle for civil rights activism, linking the struggle for higher wages with political and social freedom. Local 22's leadership cultivated a union culture that connected the workplace and the community. Union-sponsored recreation activities, including athletic and choral groups, that became popular among members. Local 22 translated union solidarity into political action. The local-led voter registration drives and membership campaigns for the NAACP and helped elect the city's first black alderman since Reconstruction. The contract the union signed in 1943 was up in May of 1946, and the union determined to fight for better rights for all its workers. Local 22 had several demands: reduction of racial inequity in wages, paid holidays, and a seniority system that would prevent the company from eliminating strong union areas of the workforce through mechanization. At first, R.J. Reynolds refused to negotiate on any issue, especially the seniority system, but fearful of a strike affecting the opening of the yearly tobacco markets, the company backed down when Local 22 called for a strike to begin on July 15th. The independent tobacco houses were a lot more resistant, and attention now focused on the Piedmont Tobacco Company. The strike continued. On August 23rd, the police cracked down. The strikers fought back. Despite this repression, the black workers of Winston-Salem continued to press on. They worked with the largely white farmers of the North Carolina Farm Bureau to build a farmer-worker alliance. On September 22nd, the union and Piedmont signed a contract that was a minor victory for the union. No union shop, although the company 90% organized at this point, but some wage hikes and the first paid holidays these workers ever had: July 4th, Labor Day, and Christmas. Ultimately, Operation Dixie failed. The rise of McCarthyism led to the passage of the so-called right-to-work law in 1947. Southern Dixiecrats provided the margin of victory necessary to override President Truman's veto. The leadership of the CIO allied with the most right-wing forces in the country to attack and purge the left from its own ranks. By 1950, the union at R.J. Reynolds was so weakened, it lost a decertification election. The defeat of Operation Dixie was a tragedy. The struggle of black workers could not be separated from the political struggle against apartheid segregation. Many white workers also saw that class unity was in their self-interest. This freedom fight had the potential to transform Southern society. Today, whether it is the issue of police violence against African Americans, the deportation of Latinos and other immigrants, or the denial of the human rights of Palestinians, the labor movement's vision must be inclusive.
So much, Paul. I would have to say that looking back however many years now, to call something Operation DeKalb Progressive is kind of a shock to my ears. I really want to thank you for bringing up these historical moments of labor history where decisions made such a difference.
And still affect us today.
So listeners, you are now about to hear the voice of Xavier Bast. He is here representing the DeKalb County Coalition for Justice and Police Accountability. He himself is the co-chair of the SCLC Next Generation Leadership Council, and he's also a member and activist with Sankofa Church of Christ. So welcome to the Labor Forum, Xavier. We're really happy to have you.
Welcome, Diane. It's an honor to be here.
All right, so there's so much to talk about. When we talk about Butch Conway or Conroy?
I think it's Conway.
Whatever it is, he's way off.
Yeah, he's way off.
Anyway, but let's start first with how and why this coalition has formed in DeKalb County, although for anybody who's been following any of the news, it should be readily apparent. But sometimes things aren't always readily apparent. So if you could talk a little bit about what motivated you and others to form this coalition.
Well, the DeKalb County Coalition for Justice and Police Accountability was formed in the aftermath of a string of police killings that occurred in the DeKalb County area, specifically the killings of Anthony Hill, Kevin Davis, and Troy Robinson. In each of these cases, there's an example of excessive use of force on the part of the police officers. Also, in each case, there was the person who was killed was unarmed at the time of the killing. I know Troy Robinson, he was tased, in fact, and he was running away, and he got tased and fell from an 8-foot elevation, broke his neck, and died. Anthony Hill is probably the most egregious example. He was completely naked when he was killed. And Kevin Davis, it was actually a domestic dispute, and he was killed and his dog was killed. So,
but he's the one who called for help.
But he was the one who called for help. So that's kind of, it defeats the purpose of police if you call them for help and you end up dead. So that's something that we perceived as a coalition, and we united in order to push forward principles of transparency, accountability, and compassion. Those are kind of our 3 standards that we want to implement into the DeKalb County leadership right now.
So let me ask, for each one of these cases in particular, and we're not even talking about the misidentification of the house where the police came in while a couple were watching TV, killed their dog, shot the man of the house, terrorized the whole neighborhood. But these 3 where people actually died, where 3 Black men died, there were demonstrations, some of them quite sizable, after each one of them. Each one of them, family members have definitely taken the lead in trying to organize. So what is it, or how is it that this coalition will assist, aid, organize, help put together all these individual cases?
Well, central to our platform, we have a list of demands. So in this list of demands, they're designed in such a way that they will bring some measure of justice for the families, and it will prevent future instances where these kind of tragedies can replicate themselves. So among our demands, and I'll just keep them short, we want the establishment of a citizens review board that will have the power of investigation, fire, and subpoena officers who are found to be wrongfully negligent or excessively violent in their encounters with citizens. We're also demanding the establishment of a family compassion and accountability protocol, the establishment of a community transparency and accountability protocol. Also, we want the names of people who have been killed by the County Police, their name to be publicized by the commissioners at the commissioner meetings, so we'll have a record and kind of database of instances of police violence in DeKalb County, and that education can serve as a basis for activism and mobilization. And also, lastly, we want the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners to call on the U.S. Department of Justice to launch an investigation into the DeKalb County Police Department in each instance of wrongful death or excessive force by DeKalb County Police.
So can I ask, Xavier, are some of your demands modeled on what some other cities have been able to accomplish? I mean, are we sort of now trying to form a kind of a national way to handle police killings?
I think that's a great question, because in my original meeting with the Board of Commissioners, I tried to emphasize that I felt this had escalated to the point of crisis, and by that I meant it was an issue that expanded far beyond the confines of DeKalb County, and was a national issue. So I was reading actually an article yesterday in Workers World. It was an article by commentary by Rasmia Odeh. She's a Palestinian solidarity activist, and in this article, she informed that in Chicago right now they're fighting police brutality, and she wanted the implementation of a citizens review council. And this is kind of a counterpart to what we're trying to do in DeKalb County with the Citizens Review Board, basically giving the public more leverage in the community in terms of applying oversight and monitoring what police officers are doing, so they can't just run roughshod, over laws. So that's just one example. I know another example I read was William Shatman. He was killed in Portsmouth, Virginia, and actually this is a kind of a good story, because the officer who killed him, his name was Officer Stephen Rankin. He was indicted on murder, on murder charges, and I feel that's a good precedent for what we're doing because the officer who killed Anthony Hill, his name was Robert Olson, and he killed Anthony Hill while he was naked. And if we can't get that indictment, then I don't know what indictment we can get. So there are good precedents out there in Virginia, Chicago that we can follow. And I think this is just indicative of a kind of shift in consciousness among the population and how we communicate with police officers.
Well, okay, so I think that now leads to this pushback by this incredible statement where the sheriff actually called people who question police and who organize rallies domestic terrorists, and a whole slew of other just most attempts, I think, to intimidate and kind of by the ability of the police to do anything, say that, you know, this is what we regard you as. I don't know if either Paul or you want to comment on that, but go ahead.
I can comment on it, and I think as alarming as it is what he said, it was completely predictable. And by predictable, I mean there's a kind of transformation going on right now within our police departments where they're shifting from a kind of policing in a sense of protecting the community, where it's more about they're adopting a national security ethos. And under the national security ethos, force is the first reaction when you come in contact with a citizen. So, in Kevin Davis' case was a perfect illustration of that. He barely crossed the threshold of his living quarters and he was just shot dead. Tamir Rice is another example. Police just drive up and shoot them within seconds. And even the director of public safety, Mr. Cedric Alexander, he used to work for the Department of Homeland Security, and he was appointed by President Obama to lead a 21st century task force on policing. So we're seeing this kind of confluence of national security culture with domestic policing culture. And I think out of that mix, you get instances like a police chief comparing Black Lives Matter to terrorists, because if that's the ideology that they have, that everyone in our community is a potential enemy and every encounter is a combat situation, then you are going to see the people as terrorists and not as just residents who you are supposed to protect under the law.
And that connects to what we saw in Ferguson with the militarization. It's like an occupying force in the neighborhood.
Exactly. And James Baldwin, he said the same thing. And he wrote an article for The Nation in 1966 where he describes the police force as an occupation force. So I imagine if he lived today, it'd be like super occupation force, because it's multiplied, tenfold, like it's beyond the imaginations and nightmares of some of the people who lived, my grandparents' generation.
Can you describe your vision for how a citizens review board would work and how the community could get control of this issue?
Principally, I think a citizens review board should, first of all, it should be democratic in its own structure, because I feel if you have a citizens review board that works by appointment or that consists of people who don't have credibility or kind of good purchase in the community, then whatever decisions they make isn't going to be reflective of the popular will. So that's foremost, I think the Citizens Review Board should be democratic in its structure. Secondly, I believe it should be a recall mechanism in place where if decisions are being made where it's not in line with what the community is fighting for, there should be a mechanism in place where you can replace them, and have a new person to represent the community. And lastly, it's about, and this is the thing, the DeKalb County Coalition for Justice and Police Accountability, what we're asking for is basically for the DeKalb County leadership to take seriously the mandates that they espouse on their official documents on their websites. So they have 3 mandates: is governance, representation, accountability. And we're basically saying we don't want to embrace that as mere rhetoric. We want to have it implemented in policy. So, and that would mean whenever someone gets killed, there's a direct, interaction between the family of those killed and the officer who carried out the killing. And that part would have to be fulfilled by those in power. And that's why we're doing the rallies, the activism, because no matter how well together we are, if we don't have a power system that's responsive to us, then it's not going to amount to much. So it has to be like a combination of direct action and being diligent in terms of how we structure ourselves and how we articulate our needs.
Xavier, would you mind letting our listeners know about any upcoming activities that the coalition is doing, and also how they can reach out to coalition members if they want to get engaged?
Sure. Our latest action will be at the DeKalb County Commissioners Building. That's on 1300 Commerce Drive in Decatur, Georgia. We will be confronting the Board of Commissioners and raising these demands and keeping alive the names of Anthony Hill, Kevin Davis, and Troy Robinson, and making sure that these families have some modicum of justice. And anyone who's interested in that is highly encouraged to attend. And we'll be there in numbers.
And when, tomorrow?
It's tomorrow. Yes, ma'am. At 8:30. It's 8:30 in the morning. 1300 Commerce Drive in Decatur, Georgia. You can just Google it. Google DeKalb County Commissioners Building, and that should be the address that pops up.
All right, and then do you have a website or Facebook or email or telephone number?
My name is Xavier Best. I have Facebook, just Xavier Best, last name B as in boy, EST. The DeKalb County Coalition, we also have an email that's at dccjpa@gmail.com. Again, that's dccjpa@gmail.com. And any inquiries you have, you can just send it to that email, and one of our spokespersons will answer promptly.
Thank you so much, Xavier. You're really a great representative for the group, I want to say.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And we very much are happy that you were able to come on the Labor Forum today. So folks, we'll be listening to a couple messages from WRFG as we transition to our next guests. And they are all from the Peoplestown fight to stop the displacement of residents from their homes. So please stay tuned to the Labor Forum.
That's great. U.S. campaign to end the Israeli occupation will hold its annual national conference in Atlanta Friday, September 25th through Sunday, September 27th. The opening session Friday night will be at
We'll do longer.
542 Moreland Avenue Southeast, Atlanta 30316, from 7:30 to 10 p.m. All other sessions will be at the Holiday Inn and Suites, Atlanta Airport North, 1380 Virginia Avenue.
I can find you on Facebook and send you. Because I only have like 47
cultural presentations and a film show. Leaders of Palestinian organizations as well as U.S. national and local groups offer political analysis
But they're both
and
Dan, you have 1 minute.
The website is
Any one of those three seats?
Talking broader.
Oh, no.
I'll send you back to you.
Once again, for the national.
I'm over here.
Okay, all right.
Is September 25th through September 25th.
Is there one more announcement?
Yes, there is, but it'll only be like command. It's not. Should I tell her to call it down?
Sponsored and supported community station about progressive in
Okay.
3 minutes.
89.3 FM and WRFG.org.
All right, so first I'm going to ask each of you your name. I'm going to ask you, neither of you live on this block, right?
No.
Do either of you live in Peoplestown? Yes. You all, okay, so you're Peoplestown. So you have been through the stadium.
Yep.
Okay,
You have a
so-
minute and 30 seconds.
Okay, so the microphones need to be about 2 inches from your mouth. And you're going in the middle. You two are going to be sharing this one. It's a directional mic, so you don't have to be quite as close.
Okay. You can start it off.
And you need to pull yours
Hey, Tim,
down.
actually, I'm just gonna put it in the middle of y'all because once you move this, yeah, there's a squeak in it that like is super loud. And I can always adjust the sensitivity, so just.
We are also being video live streamed. The world can watch you. So there's a tendency to look towards me when I ask a question. I'm over here in this corner. Then move your mouth away from the microphone. Don't do that. Look at Christopher.
Okay, yeah, I got you.
All proceeds benefit.
Thank you.
Your station will
Oh, so everybody's cell phones are off?
15 seconds.
They're on silent. I like to post during these things.
Well, everybody's gonna watch you posting.
5 seconds.
5 seconds. Welcome back. You are tuned into the Labor Forum here on WRFG 89.3 FM. I know some of you are listening on your radio, others on the stream at WRFG.org. Perhaps some of you are on the mobile app that WRFG has, and maybe a few of you are actually watching us live on the Labor Forum YouTube channel, where you also can go there and see the program later. So we are back now with our second set of guests. This is a really important struggle that is taking place in Atlanta. Atlanta is supposedly the city too busy to hate. But it is definitely the city too busy to listen to its residents. And so one of the struggles that's taking place is in Peoplestown. This is a neighborhood adjacent to the Turner Field. And so we have two guests who are residents of Peoplestown. And we're going to have a third person calling in. Is that going to be okay, Christopher? It is. So we're expecting Tanya Washington to call in a few moments. And she is one of the people whose homes is actually scheduled to be bulldozed and demolished by the city of Atlanta. And we also have with us Tim Franzen, who is with Occupy Our Homes Atlanta, a longtime housing activist, housing justice activist here in the city. So let's get into it right away, sisters and ladies and gentlemen and brother. What is going on? What is happening in Peoplestown? Who wants to start? Okay.
Hi, my name is Sharice Brown.
Hi, Sharice.
There's a lot going on in Peoplestown. We have an ethnic cleansing going on in Peoplestown.
Ethnic cleansing is a good term.
Gentrification, displacement. The belt line is coming through and Turner Field is redeveloping. And the community needs to be at the table to say what happens in our community. We live there and we know what's best for our community. And we wish everyone would pay attention to us.
Okay, so one of the things, Peoplestown is one of the historic Black neighborhoods, kind of just on the edge of the city. And what that means is that the first stadium was built when I-20 was built. Others in that area. Then the first stadium came in. Then the Olympic Stadium came in. And each time, people have lost homes that they've had. In general, it seems as though big developers just their playground.
Correct on that. You're correct over that. One of my coalition members, I'm quoting her, community over commodity. You know, they see an ATM machine. You know, we're a hot topic now, a hot community right now. Everybody is looking for to develop around there. That's the next best thing since government cheese. Peoplestown, Summerhill, Mechanicsville, the surrounding communities around Turner Field. So they're thinking about everybody but the people who helped build that community and been there for years. And now they want to displace us to put in what they want in there for profit, you know.
So may I ask, Sharice, how long have you lived there?
23 years.
All right. Let's go to our next guest.
I'm Allison. Yeah, I'm Allison Johnson. I'm born and raised in Peoplestown. I live, I worship, and I work in Peoplestown.
So, so were either of you involved in the past struggles over the two baseball fields or the stadiums back before the Olympics? And, I mean, I'm just trying to, I guess what I'm trying to find out is, are you new to this fight or have you been in it for a long time?
We've both been in this fight for a long time, and this has just not been a fight about the two stadiums in our community. and it's been about a fight about us having fair equity in the game. We want skin in the game just like everybody else. We have never not stood up for what it is we wanted. Somehow, we've always been overlooked when it comes to what it is that we need and the accessibility that we have in our community. But now is the time that we are not being backed into a corner any longer. We're going to stand up for what it is we want and what it is we deserve. We're not going to take it no more.
Okay, so I realize, is Tanya on the phone, Christopher?
Yes.
She is, but we don't have headsets on. So, Tanya, we're going to hold a little minute till we all get all our equipment. No, that's not it. It's all right. So, folks, we're kind of going on the fly here. We had hoped that Tanya was going to be here in the studio, and she's actually at City Council. And at City Council, where she's about to present some thousands of petitions that have been collected. Hey, Tanya. Okay, well, we're still getting headsets for Sharice and Allison and Tim so that they can hear you. So if you wouldn't mind just staying on the phone, and while we set up a little bit more, and I'll ask one of them a question while we are doing this. So, folks, this is live radio, and we are about, and we can spin on a dime here at WRFG. So let me ask Tim a question. So this is you actually started now a couple of years ago around the whole issue of foreclosures.
That's right.
And have moved into kind of bigger, not just so much an individual homeowner who's fighting a rapacious mortgage company that lied to them and misled them, but now really to bigger community-based issues. Could you explain why that's happening?
Well, I think we've followed the housing crisis. You know, we saw in Atlanta especially hundreds and thousands in Atlanta alone facing the loss of their accumulative wealth through the financial crisis. And for the folks that struggle the most were regular, everyday, low-wage, middle-income folks and seniors that invested their whole lives into their home, and then all of a sudden the market crashed and they lost everything. It was the greatest transfer of wealth in American history. And so we felt that it was a priority to focus on fighting around the issue of these wrongful foreclosures. And 11 million people lost their homes. And all over the country, folks fought through Occupy Homes. We saved hundreds of homes. But at the end of the day, the crisis has changed. And now we're seeing that Wall Street has figured out a way to buy massive swaths of land around the city. We're turning into a renter nation. And for us, the fight around housing justice has to be around somebody's ability to live in a dwelling, whether they own it, whether they rent it. And let's be honest, most of us that own homes, myself included, our landlord's just Bank of America, you know, instead of some guy. You know, it really is not that much different. So, and we've also decided to focus on a few neighborhoods instead of the whole city to try to really build something real. And we really wouldn't be able to do it without folks like Tanya and Sharice and Allison leading the way.
All right, so we all have our headsets on now, Tanya, which means everybody can hear you. Great, so you...
All right, Tanya.
So, Tanya, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself to our listening audience.
Hi, my name is Tanya Washington, and I am a Peoplestown resident of 4 years, and I'm engaged in the county battle for ownership over my home. They've taken 20 of the 28 homes on my block. They have announced a petition for eminent domain, but that's right against which they have negotiated a number of settlements, and my neighbors, the remaining neighbors, and myself are refusing to go and are offering resistance to the watershed.
Maybe just for the sake of some background, they are claiming that the reason they have to tear down that whole strip of area?
Yeah, in 2012, there was significant flood event on my block. A number of my neighbors experienced damage. Not only did they have stormwater in their homes, they also had lost sewage, fine stormwater system that runs underneath our block. And so they entered into, or they filed suit against the city because it was an ongoing problem caused by the city's failure to adopt a comprehensive sustainable and effective plan to deal with flooding. And so they sued the city. There were a number of settlements that would have to be involved with the lawsuit to those settlements. Now they've decided to push into the flooding in Peoplestown to take the entire block. They are going to harm the state law and identity. But essentially, it's going to be a sewage retention pond. And here's in the middle of a neighborhood displacing the remaining residents. Many of these people have homes that don't flood and have never flooded. My neighborhood has been there for 4 years. The house is built in 1924. I have a full basement. There's no evidence of flooding. I had a walkthrough. I had a survey done. Showed I'm not floodplain. And so the watershed state is not easy from the flood that's coming. And then being the flood is a great act for displacement and gentrification. They want the block, they want the neighborhood, and we are inconvenient to their plan.
So right before I came here today, I got a robocall letting me know about a meeting Wednesday at Turner Field about Turner Field development plans. And so this is my question to you. Is this move to tear down the homes on your block, how is it related to the potential development of the Turner Field area? Because what it seems to me is that it's all those parking lots that help create runoff because the water can't seep into the asphalt. And that if those parking lots weren't there, I was wondering whether any flood problems would be there.
I think that's a great question. I do believe that there is a relationship between the two. I think the Department of Watershed and the state seem very careful. We work in the connection between the two because private development is not a public use that would allow for eminent domain action and eminent domain action would be if you gain a people property for development of state or public utility purpose like flooding, redevelopment areas, that sort of option. And so when we discovered there was an alternative plan that was supported by a firm named like or show and recommended show parking pond around Turner Field, also very parking lot geographic, which the firm acknowledged includes a lot of flooding. We discovered that.
Could I ask Allison and Sharice here in the studio, when you hear this, obviously you don't live on this block, but what is it that you fear, or not fear maybe it's too strong, not the right word. what is it that you don't want to see in the rest of the neighborhood if this plan goes through? What do you think it'll lead to?
Well, this is Sharice. I think if it's flooding 2 blocks over, because I stay 2 streets over, you might as well see, then this phantom flood can also appear where I live. So intimate domain 2 blocks over can be intimate domain and condemnation where I live. So I can see this going further and getting out of hand. Just taking properties, doing what you want, destroying communities by intimate domain. So whatever happens on Atlanta and Armand affects the whole community. Right. Because it's only blocks apart.
Right.
So that's why I'm here today, because it concerns me as well.
And same for you.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I know for a fact that my grandmother was a neighbor of Tanya's. She's just 4 doors down, 168 Atlanta Avenue. And I don't quite remember any flooding in her basement or in her home. But I do know that what affects Tanya affects the entire Peoplestown. We are about 80% at the point where we have displaced at least 20 persons out of our community. People have worked generations and generations to have what it is that we call the American dream. And it seems that the city is at a point where our generational home or housing has been devalued along with our lives. So whatever affects Ms. Washington, whatever affects Ms. Jackson, affects everybody in Peoplestown and the surrounding communities there. Because without these people in the community, you have no neighborhood. You do not have a community. You have no way of building a city, a state, or nation. So the effects are far further than just on Atlanta Avenue or Armand.
Let me ask you, I was at the press conference this noon, and it was mentioned that Ms. Mattie Jackson, who is the 93-year-old leader, inspiration, warrior, queen of Peoplestown, somebody that has lived there for decades and has had such an enormous impact. Her house is one of the ones that this city is threatening to destroy. And she has been at a number of events, and she is definitely frail in body and strong in spirit. And it was announced today that she is having some sort of a medical emergency. It's very clear that the stress of all of this is having an impact on her. Would anybody like to comment either on anything you have heard about how she's doing or just on her role in this struggle? I'll start with you, Tanya. We had actually hoped that Ms. Jackson was going to be able to call in today, so if any of her other friends are listening, we want to make sure that we offer our sincere hope that she is going to be feeling better and soon, and more importantly, that any city official that heard the presentation today of your petitions and has seen on television or in the news the amount of support that you all have raised and this important issue that you have brought before the public, and that they back off of this. So let me just ask a few final questions. We only have a couple minutes left. What next? You did this petitions today. What's next?
So I know the fight is going to continue. We will go back to the table and we'll strategize of how we help Tanya and Mattie Jackson as a whole, as a community, to not be displaced, because people want to see that land develop for what it is they want and not for the use of the community. So we'll go back to the table and we'll continue to fight. And we're going to fight this all the way to the end.
I know Ms. Jackson has said she will not move. So I don't know whether the city of Atlanta, Cassine Reed, and the city council and the Department of Watershed Management is looking forward to dragging a 93-year-old woman in handcuffs off her porch. But it seems as though that is what she is willing to do. Is there any other comment from anybody else? Because then we want to make sure that you are able to give us, if you've got a meeting coming up, telephone number, Facebook, website, etc. Is there any event coming up that we can alert our listeners to?
Well, our Turnfield Coalition Community Coalition meeting is Thursday, September the 24th at 6 p.m. at Dunbar Elementary School in Mechanicsville.
Well, did you all know about this meeting that I got a robocall about this Wednesday night? I assume you're all going to be there.
Well, actually, we haven't gotten the robocall because we've been at the city hall all day with city council. So we're laughing, but that's a very serious issue because my phone doesn't accept messages. So if I don't know about this, then I don't know about the meeting, and I'm locked out of the plan. So that's a huge issue, and that's just me right now. So, and I can imagine it's 50 or 100 more people that are in the same predicament. So that's another issue that, about how notification to the neighborhood is done. Exactly. All right, so in a minute or so, Tim, can you give us some contact information?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, because there's really two different kinds of fights going on. There's a very personal fight around somebody's home, but then there's a bigger fight around this Atlanta way of a few well-connected folks getting paid a lot of money around development projects and long-term residents being treated as disposable objects. So if that doesn't sit well with you, you can go to Occupy Homes Atlanta Facebook page, and we have just posted the online petition. We need people to sign that. We need folks to sign it and share it all over the country. There's about 5,000 people that have signed it. If you sign that, you're not just signing an online petition that's going to sit there on the internet. We're going to likely need to deliver it again, and that is also a point of contact. Today we asked everybody that signed the petition to call City Council, and a lot of people did. It makes a big difference. So that's a way for us to consolidate folks all around the city that may care about the personal struggle of Tanya and Ms. Jackson, but also recognize that this is a broader issue around the way that Atlanta develops community. So please go to our Facebook page, Occupy Our Homes Atlanta, sign the online petition, like the page.
All right, thank you so much. I want to thank our guests who are here in the studio, Sharice, Tim, and Allison, and Tanya, who's on the phone. And please do stay tuned in again next Monday. We will be having a program about the issue of misclassification. Thank you.
Stop displacement.
Thank you so much for covering this.
You're very welcome. It's always an honor to be with people who struggle. Thank you.
Did I do a call to action? I did a call to action.
You did 3 of them.
There's a way I gotta word it where I don't get
You can.
Oh, you can.
You
When I'm
invite
fine,
them
I
to
said-
sign.
Right.
I'm
But
saying
they-
it's online.
Hopefully the FCC doesn't shut it all down.
Oh, they find us, we'll come to you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So am I gonna see you all this Wednesday?
Yeah.
I'm planning on
Yeah,
going.
I'll be there.
Yeah.
So who sent the robocall was,
I think you should.
Keisha Bottom.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
When you said that, yeah. Because she sent out a mailing last. Did you get a mailing last week? She sent out a mailing last week, but it only went to the donors. So that's how, because remember you were saying, remember you were saying how even from the property taxes, that mailing is going to the voter registration. Yeah, so the period that you can get is the voter registration process. Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much.